Hi, I'm Mark. This is Mark's Tech Vlogs on YouTube, and today I'm going to bring you guys a comparison between the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 12. Up until a couple of weeks ago when Apple released the iPhone 12, I was an iPhone 10 user and had been for a few years. The iPhone 10 is still a great phone with a very similar design from the front to the new phone, but a very different design compared to the rest of the new phone. The iPhone 10 3 years on, as we come to expect with iPhones, is still an incredibly good phone that runs pretty quick. What I was beginning to notice was a bit of lag when opening apps, and also that my battery was due a service. In addition to that, whilst my iPhone 10 was still taking some great photos, the photos my wife was taking on her 11 were certainly better. This means, like me, if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering if it's time for an upgrade from your 10 or your 10s to the 12. What I want to do in this video is put the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 12 side by side and compare the specs, but also talk about why I decided to upgrade. So let's crack on and talk about some of the differences in spec between these two phones. And I want to start off by talking about design. Now, the design difference between the two is probably the most noticeable thing. And in 2020, Apple gave the iPhone 12 a new design. Although if you remember the iPhone 4 and 4S, you won't think it's actually that different. What I mean is Apple have gone back to this much squarer look. This means that a phone can even stand up on its end. The iPhone 12 also comes in a bigger range of colours, including things like product red. In my opinion, the iPhone 12 has the better design. I personally think it looks nicer, I like the two-tone colours, and I also think it's more comfortable to hold. That being said, the iPhone 10 doesn't look outdated even 3 years later. In terms of size, they are incredibly similar sized phones, and you don't really notice the difference in size. It is literally decimals of millimeters. But if you care, then the iPhone 12 is slightly taller than the 10, it's slightly narrower, and it's slightly thinner. The thing you do notice is the weight difference, and the iPhone 12 is 12 grams lighter than the 10. This doesn't sound like much on paper, but it really is noticeable. But what about the screen? So both phones have incredibly responsive OLED displays. The iPhone 10 has a 5.8-inch display and the iPhone 12 has a 6.1-inch display. The iPhone 12 has a slightly higher resolution and a higher contrast ratio. For me, this is one of the bigger differences that I've noticed between the two phones. For day-to-day usage, there's not a huge amount of difference, but as soon as you start watching a video or needing to concentrate on the screen more, you really do notice the difference with the 12. A particularly good example of this is having the option in the YouTube app to boost the video to 2160p quality. Continuing with displays, the iPhone 12 also has the new ceramic shield display, which Apple say is 4 times stronger than the iPhone 11. If you watch some of the drop tests on YouTube, you'll see that it does fare pretty well. Also with screens, it's worth saying that the iPhone 10 still has Apple's 3D touch, which is where you push harder to do extra actions. If you compare this to the 12, which has some force touch where you basically hold longer, I did take a little bit of time to get used to this. Personally, I think 3D touch is actually the better system, but it looks like force touch is here to stay. It is, however, worth saying that both phones have incredibly good responsive displays, but the iPhone 12 certainly has the edge thanks to its video performance. So what about the other specs? So the iPhone 10 is IP67 dust and water resistant, and the iPhone 12 is IP68. This essentially means you can take the iPhone 12 in deeper water. Inside the phone, the iPhone 10 has the A11 chip, and the iPhone 12 has the A14 Bionic chip. This makes the 12 noticeably faster, but also enables it to do things like night mode and all of the camera lenses. Both phones support wireless charging and they unlock with Face ID, and they perform really well for just day-to-day tasks and mobile data and all the things you'd expect a phone to do well. The iPhone 12 has the addition of being 5G compatible. For most users, depending where you live in the world, this is neither here nor there now as 5G hasn't rolled out that widely. However, if you use your phone for a few years at a time, this is a great way of future-proofing your device. The iPhone 12 also has the new MagSafe, a way of wireless charging being faster on an iPhone, and it uses a kind of magnetic hook on the back and some magnets inside the phone. There's also a range of accessories that go with this, and I think time is going to tell whether this is a useful feature or not. It's not something I've personally used yet with my 12. And now, probably the moment you've been waiting for, let's talk about the cameras, because this is where the big differences are. So on the 10, the front-facing camera is a 7 megapixel camera, and it can take 1080p video at 30 frames per second. In comparison, the 12 has a 12 megapixel front-facing camera and supports portrait mode and 4K video. There is certainly a noticeable difference between these two cameras. When it comes to rear cameras, the story continues. The iPhone 10 has dual 12 megapixel wide and telephoto lenses. It has 2x optimal zoom and 10x digital zoom. These are zoom in. It's also got a flash and it does portrait mode using those two lenses. The 12 has a 12 megapixel wide and 12 megapixel ultra wide lens, and it supports 10x zoom out thanks to that ultra wide and digital zoom up to 5x. In terms of zooming in on things, this gives the iPhone X the edge, but everything else with the 12 knocks the 10 out of the park. And whilst on paper these lenses don't sound very different in terms of spec, a lot of this is done with the software. The iPhone 12 takes excellent photos in all light settings, but is especially impressive when it comes to night mode and low light performance. The same goes for video. Whilst both support 4K rear camera video at 24, 30 or 60 frames per second, the 12 supports Dolby Vision and HDR, and it also takes excellent low light video. In terms of playback, I'd also say the iPhone 12 probably has better quality audio. Finally, for battery life, the iPhone 12 wins again, even compared with a 10 with a brand new battery. Which brings us down to the question of this video, and the question I was asking myself a few weeks ago as I watched the iPhone 12 announcement. You've got an iPhone X, should you upgrade? Now, as I've hinted at throughout this video, I did, and it's not something I've regretted. For me, having used the iPhone X for a couple of years, going to a 12 feels like I've got a brand new phone. This is in part thanks to the new design and a new colour range. But for me, in upgrading, there were two important reasons. The first was that my 10 was beginning to lag a little. It didn't struggle often, but I did notice a bit of delay when opening apps every so often, and actually the iPhone 12 is super fast. The second reason, and I've already talked a little bit about this, was to do with cameras. The iPhone X still takes some really good photos, and I still think the results I've taken over the last couple of years with that camera are brilliant, but the iPhone 12 is much better. I especially love the option of night mode and low light performance. So essentially, if like me, your iPhone is your main camera, then going from the 10 to the 12 might be a good upgrade. If you're on a tighter budget, you might want to look at last year's 11, because actually the cameras are very similar. The big difference is with the night mode being on all lenses and not just one. If you guys have got any specific questions about the two, do drop them below and I'll try and answer those. Do please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.